What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another episode of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, are Callum Wiggins
Wonderful.
and Robert DeFelice.
Did you know that Matt likes to escape in dilapidated boats?
Black Cloud. There you go. There's three different gimmicks here. If you haven't figured it out yet by looking at the title and all the other kind of stuff that's going on here, what we're going to be doing for the main event for this week is the 23rd edition of Superstar Scores. And by 23 episodes, you should pretty much know how it works by now. But in case you're brand new, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown here. Superstar Scores is our ranking system. It's where you take a 0 to 100 scale and you break it down into 10 different categories, which themselves are placed into 5 umbrella sections, and you rate the person based off of a 0 to 10. 10 times 10, you get your 100 score, and it's all kind of with the philosophy in mind of just breaking down somebody's career as a whole and seeing how do they stack up compared to some other people. Now, we have done 23 episodes of this in the past, and I've kept track of my own records, and I've been going through a little bit here and there, trying to update some things. When you do, for instance, Shawn Michaels was the first one, you'd have no context of how you would rank some other people necessarily. After 20-something episodes, start to get a little feel of, well, if this person's a 5, then that person should be an 8. If this person's a 2, that person should be a 9, so on and so forth. So I've gone through, and I've changed a couple things here and there, and with the Matt Hardy score, trying to reflect based off of 22 previous episodes. Keeping that in mind, there's also a chance to change what happens in regards to even my Matt Hardy score. So I'm going to keep my stuff a little bit flexible. I'm sure everybody else has the possibility of changing their mind on certain things too. But keeping that in mind, just in a general sense, number-wise, what's the highest that you guys put for him? Not necessarily saying what category, but just number-wise. Did anybody give him a 10?
No. Oh, I didn't.
The highest I gave him was an 8 in a category.
Yeah.
I've got him I've got a 9 for one of his.
So what's the lowest you guys gave him? Mine was a 5.
A 4.
I gave him a 5.
So I'm at the top and the bottom at the end of this.
So that's just to give you guys a little bit of a range of what we're working with here, and we'll see what the scores ends up being at the end of it. But let's start going through the categories here. I'll give you guys an explanation of what they are, of course, to set them up. The first 2 categories are going to be in the umbrella section of ring skills, and the first category underneath that is athleticism, which is essentially a breakdown of their maneuvers themselves, their signature moves, what's their finisher like, what is their actual in-ring, pure athleticism, their energy, whether or not they can execute their moves without botching, different things like that. Psychology is on the side of the story that they're telling. Can they take a long match and make it interesting? Do they get boring? Do they tend to just do rest holds because they can't think of anything else? Do you get swept up in the emotion of it, or do you feel like they're just going through an exhibition? Different things like that. For my rankings on here, I had given Matt a 6 for athleticism and a 7 for psychology. Philosophy being, when you look at the athleticism of the Hardy Boys, and a lot of my comparisons in this became Jeff versus Matt, and then them as a whole, and then breaking down that kind of a thing, Matt was the least athletic between the two. And when he was in his solo career, I don't remember him doing all that much crazy stuff. He was basically the type of guy that would do a spot here or there, but more of just a generic wrestler. And I was trying to think of different things that he did that were really athletic beyond the basic stuff, which basic should be a 5, generally speaking. Couldn't really think of all that much, so that's where I go with my 6 on that one. But psychology-wise, I gave him a little bit bump up with a 7 because he understands how to put a match together, I think, a little bit more than Jeff does. And of course, if you compare him to other people who have these big, like, grand WrestleMania moments and people are going nuts in the arena and different things like that, I can't put him at like an 8 or anything higher than that, because I don't remember a single Matt Hardy situation that was telling a story beyond just stunt work with the Hardy Boys. So 6 and 7 is where I'm leaning. Who wants to go next, though, and we'll bounce around and see what happens and where we land.
I'm barely higher than you. I gave him a 7 athleticism and an 8 for psychology. Athleticism, like you said, he's not Jeff, but I do think he did do a lot in his career, and he's paying for it now, and that should be, honored and acknowledged. And 8 for psychology, because I think that's going to be his forte moving forward as a producer. And really, he is a smart person when it comes to creating characters and feuds, and he does know how to work a match if he's got the right opponent. So Edge comes to mind for me.
Having flashbacks to Stan Hansen now. You gotta have an opponent.
But like Edge comes to mind for me because his 2005 feud with Edge was very good, and they told really good stories there. And of course, everything he does with Jeff. And I think if he got the opponent, it was great. And he definitely will be more of a psychology guy as a producer going forward.
Oh, I think I'm echoing Rob's ones with the 7 for athleticism and the 8 for psychology. Again, in the ring, not quite as athletic as Jeff, but if you take his entire career, like as a whole, he's like obviously as the Hardy Boys, they were both incredibly athletic. They did stuff that most people just couldn't do in the ring at that time. And as time has progressed, he's become a lot slower, a lot more, I guess, methodical, and a lot more standard with the moves that he pulls out, because he just doesn't go. He can't obviously go to extra mile. I wouldn't expect him to at his age. So I think a 7 just about like levels it out, because in the past with the Hardy Boys, he's probably like an 8 or a 9, and nowadays he's closing in on like a 4 or a 5. And for psychology, I'd go with the 8, because I think with the, like, obviously the ladder matches, there's the argument that there's not a lot of psychology to them because they were mainly just like spot fests.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot more at play with them, a little bit more, because they essentially like revolutionized what the ladder match was. For better or for worse, you can obviously make whatever argument is, but it was a different type of ladder match, or a different type of tables match, or steel cage match, or whatever type of gimmick match they were thrown into. And I think Matt Hardy had some really good feuds with Rey Mysterio, Edge, obviously, Jeff Hardy when they had like the feud with each other, and it progressed it into like Ring of Honor and TNA and stuff like that as well. But I think his mind works at a rate that his body can't really keep up with. So that's why I would probably put his psychology over his actual ring work. I think if he had that sort of like ability to just string matches together with his body a little bit better, rather than just be, I don't want to say like a glorified stuntman, but being more along the lines of just somebody who was known for his stunts in his younger years, and later on became just a bit more of a, I guess, adequate wrestler, then he'd be like much more highly revered, because he's clearly a very creative guy.
Yeah, and I think creativity is one thing, but I think if he's not necessarily creative when it, like, between the bell, then it doesn't translate as well. And it's almost like the feud with Edge, it's like I put more stock into what happens before they start wrestling than anything else.
I think there's an argument for that. I just think I always like to give an 8 for people that I can kind of visualize thinking during the match. Like, you get a sense that they're considering what they're going to do next and how the crowd's reacting and elements like that. And I think Hardy fits into that category. Whereas anything kind of below that is somebody who's like a 6 or 7 is somebody that kind of takes attention to that, but is more just focused on delivering what they were told to do. Whereas Hardy would probably go a little bit more outside the box if if situations allow it, obviously.
So just recapping again, I've got a 6 and a 7. Callum, what was yours again?
7 and 8.
And
And
mine
Rob?
was a 7 and an 8 as well.
All right, so you guys are a little bit higher than me right now, but we're still kind of in the same range. Let's move to Mike's skills. Those are charisma and character. On the charisma side of things, that's essentially like the foundational mic work. You know, can they cut a promo? Do they stutter? Are they boring to listen to? That kind of a thing. And character is their actual gimmick. You know, that's more their storytelling ability outside of the ring. You know, that's their can they pull off being a heel or a babyface or both? Are they engaging with the crowd? Are they the type of guy that you look at them and you just go, oh, that's a wrestler, but I don't know who they are? Or are they somebody like, you know, like an Undertaker where it's like, you know, character up the ass kind of a thing? Not necessarily up the ass, but you know what I mean. I gave him a little bit higher scores when it came to these. These are where I had my 7 and my 8. My 7 is for charisma because I feel, at least when it comes to the broken and woken side of things, he stepped up his game from before. Previously, the charisma was a lot lower. If we had left Matt Hardy at Hardy Boys Matt Hardy, I probably would have put him at like a 4. But he upgraded after a couple years. And version 1 and stuff like that, like he's tried some different things. Character-wise, 2 as well. That kind of like coincides with that. With the, I guess it's more so, here's the distinction. I put him a 7 on charisma because his mic skills aren't as well as his characters are, and that's why I give him an 8 for the character. If he was better on the mic, he'd get an 8 for both, I think. Sometimes you can tell he's kind of still struggling a little bit. But I got a feeling you guys are going to be higher on these for me, too. But go for it.
You can go first, Callum.
I'm actually lower on the mic skills. I've given him a 6. I think Matt Hardy. I mean, 6 is obviously the suggestion that he's better than average, but he's not great. And I think the character, especially with the Woken character, is pretty much a cover for his poor mic skills, because he can put on ridiculous accents and say just one word in a funny way. He's obviously got a lot of charisma when he's saying it, and it's like an interesting way of doing it, but it's not like he's delivering great promo material. It's just a case of he's saying it in a weird way that everyone's getting on board with. That's fantastic. And I think, especially previous stuff, I mean, the stuff he did with version 1 was okay, but the previous stuff with the Hardy Boys and his stuff like post version 1, like between, I'd say, about 2006 to 2010, was really just not inspiring at all. He comes across like a nice, cool enough guy, but nothing really beyond that until obviously the Woken character kicks in. And that's why I give him a 9 for his character. I love version 1. It's almost like it comes close to being my favourite Hardy character next to the Woken stuff, because I just think everything he put into that, all the work he did with it, the effort that he put in to try and get himself over and separate himself from outside of Jeff's shadow, which he'd been trying to escape for probably quite a few years at that point, was just really like creative and funny, and led to some really good like work in the cruiserweight division of SmackDown, and obviously with a few other people as well. And then you go through the period of like the Matt Hardy will not die stuff, which is fine to start with, but then after that it just becomes like a bit of a tired trope. He's like a pre-Dolph Ziggler in the sense says that he just has one character and he just keeps going back to it, even though nobody really cares anymore. But then he goes to TNA and develops the broken character, which at first everyone just thinks, oh my god, like he's absolutely lost it this time. But then, like as time progresses, it becomes the most like over character, pretty much, maybe in the entirety of wrestling at that point in time. And I think he needs to be commended for like really shining a light on it. If the broken character was even like slightly worse than what it was, or slightly less like bizarre or incomplete, then he would never have been brought back to WWE. Neither him or Jeff. So I think the broken character on its own is like a 10 as a character. And he plays it perfectly and he stays in character the entire time. But mixed with all the other stuff, I think there's some good and some bad. So I think a 9 is a fair number for me.
I gave him a 6 for charisma. Basically echoing what Callum said. He's good. He's really good, especially when he has his own idea in the works. But there are those times of like, well, I'm Matt Hardy and I'm not gonna die, and I'm just gonna do the leg drop off the ladder because they have nothing else for me at the moment. And that was too much of a stretch of his career, unfortunately. But the character stuff, I gave an 8. I love all of Matt Hardy's characters, including Big Money Matt. That's just like the super troll on the internet. He's so funny. He's so witty. And I'm glad that he's being recognized for it now. Because for a long time, he was made fun of for it, for being like too into the internet. And now he's really taking advantage of it. So I like that kind of stuff.
Again, still kind of in the same sort of range here. No, like, I gave him a 9 and I gave him a 2, like that kind of thing. I might be swayed to downgrade him a little bit and go from a 7 to a 6 on charisma. I think I might do that. I'm going to adjust my score here. Boom. He just lost a point. Sorry, Matt.
We've had the first adjustment. Right, there will not be any further.
We'll see. The deal might get worse all the time. Miss Lando. And good Star Wars. This isn't about Last Jedi, I promise. Solo sucked too. Appearance. The two sides of appearance are physique and entrance. Entrance is pretty standard. It's their fucking entrance. I don't need to explain that. Physique, though, just to clarify, the look has to do with a lot of different things. A little bit has to do with their character, because to a certain extent, if you look like a certain type of gimmick, then you should look like a certain type of gimmick. You know, if you are a bodybuilder type person, you shouldn't look like Mabel. And my examples that I had written down for these 23 things, where the note says, someone like Mabel isn't supposed to look like John Morrison, but Matt Hardy gaining weight deducts his points. That was what I had been using all the time. So, I mean, I'm bringing Matt Hardy into the mix. For physique, the highest I can give him is a 6. Matt Hardy was never the most muscular guy. He was never the tallest guy. He was never the leanest guy either. So when you look at high flyers, they're usually on the leaner side. And at his peak, he was still heavier than what those guys were. If you look at brawlers, which he's not necessarily a brawler, but just in the idea of like that, like as a generic wrestler template, he doesn't look like he is the same as certain other people. You know, I'd take a Shelton Benjamin over a Matt Hardy any day of the week. He's not Fat Hardy, like what we used to say, but he never really got much on like the positive side of things, so I might actually even downgrade him to a 5, but right now I'm thinking of physique for 6. And for entrance, I gave him a 6 on that too, because really when I thought about it, Jeff is the one that's exciting on the entrance. When Matt did his solo entrances, I couldn't care. I never liked his theme as much. His like pyro and everything wasn't really anything. The Woken entrance is literally him just walking out and doing the delete thing. That's it. There's not much to it. So 6s for me. Double 6. Rob, what about you?
Well, I was gonna give him a 7 on physique, but you've convinced me. I was gonna give him a 7 because even though he had that brief stretch where he was fat hardy and he did the weird look in TNA, I'm talking about the 2010 run. I always thought he kind of fit the bill for what they wanted for him. But yeah, I guess in more recent memories, he spent more time out of shape than in shape. So 6 for physique. For entrance, I'm gonna give him a 7, and it's for 2 reasons. His TNA broken entrances, especially when they would have Rebby play the piano and stuff like that. I thought that was creative. And for the version 1 entrances with the Mad Facts, I thought those were hilarious. And probably playing way too much off nostalgia here, but those were some of the funniest entrances I saw growing up.
Yeah, I have pretty similar scores. I think I'm going to give him a 5 for physique, just because. I mean, he was okay when he was in the actual Hardy Boys as a combo, but it was overshadowed by Jeff because Jeff was the more attractive, the more like you could clearly see the like ladies and the crowd were far more interested in Jeff Hardy than they were for Matt. And yeah, there was a clear period between 2007, 2012 maybe that it was clear that he really didn't give a lot of attention to what he was looking like. And obviously, I don't want to say Fat Hardy or anything like that because there's enough jokes you can make about that, and Drew's not here anyway. But we could just kind of go along the lines of he definitely was out of shape for a significant period of that time.
That man loved his grapes, though.
Exactly, and it was it wasn't terrible, but I can't really give him any more than average for it. So yeah, I think I'll stick with a 5, especially now because he's older, so we could do, and he probably actually looks better now than he did through around about the 2010 time. But it's still nothing spectacular, and I class the crazy hair and stuff like that more a part of his character as opposed to his physique or anything along those lines. Entrance, I'll go with the 7 as well. I love the version 1 stuff. The facts are just really, really just funny, and just this most inane stuff oh, Matt Hardy likes kumquats or something along those lines, or just nobody really cares about them, but you just ended up reading them because it's just there, and it was unique. There was I can't think of any entrance before or since that has that sort of aspect to it. And the Woken stuff in TNA which was a lot more theatrical than it is in WWE's version of it. So yeah, I think 5 and 7 is fair.
Let's move over to the hardest things to really do in a lot of these different editions, which are the behavioral aspects. One of them being their backstage professionalism, which boils down to their, I guess, what they do in the locker room. Are they the type of person that is a leader, or are they causing problems? Do they get into fights backstage? Do they put people over? Is it an issue of politics? Is it, something on the opposite end of things? Like an Undertaker would score really well here because people don't really have anything bad to say about him. Meanwhile, you've got other people who are like a diva and they put up a lot of fights and different things like that. I guess two of the ends of the spectrum. Are you a Bob Holly and a JBL, or are you like a John Cena type or something like that? With the public relations side of things, though, that is all the stuff that'll make WWE look bad or good. Arrests, drug problems, wellness policy violations, all the negatives that come with that. Do they get caught at an airport with drugs, or do they get into a fight with a fan? That kind of thing. Versus Are they the type of person that goes on talk shows? Do they do charities? Or do they promote the company in a sense that makes them really seem like they're a company guy and that they're a good representation of something positive? So there's a wide range here, and I got to give him my worst scores when it comes to these, because I'll give him a 6 on Backstage, because I really couldn't think of too many people that would have like an issue with Matt Hardy. Yet I just couldn't think of him being this like real leader type to boost him higher up. I might give him a little bit higher. Public relations, though, I gave him a 5, because this guy's been arrested multiple times. He's had drug issues. He's put a negative stain on this. And for a while, it was Jeff Hardy's the problematic one. And if only Matt Hardy had some of the things that Jeff Hardy had going on, well, if you could combine the two of them and make one superstar, it would be fantastic. And then Matt Hardy started to get into that. And then it became, you know, you look on like message boards back in like 2000, whatever the case may be, 2013 or something like that even, people just go straight to the whole like, all right, well, there goes the thing that Matt had over Jeff. And it's not good. So I'm going 6 and 5. I could be swayed a little bit here and there, depending on what you guys think, but I'm assuming nobody's going to be like, this is where I gave him an 8 or something, you know?
I gave him a 6 and a 6. I gave him a 6 for professionalism because, as you said, I can't think of too many issues where it was like, oh man, he was an asshole to do business with. But there are the stories of him, like, you know, I believe Big Show told the story of him falling asleep in the middle of an interview and just stuff like that. And the marketability thing, if you'd asked this question, you know, a few years ago, it probably would have been a 3 or a 4, but he's done a lot to really reinvent himself and put himself on the right path. And I think he's only going to go up from here. That's probably just me being optimistic, but I think he's over all of that. He's in a better place in his life, but he does have those negative attachments, so you got to give him a 6.
So for locker room stuff, there wasn't a huge amount I could find. I mean, I tried to look into it. Apparently, he's had like a couple of backstage altercations in the past with it's definitely the sort of people you want to avoid in the backstage thing with Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker at different times in his career. The Undertaker one surrounding like this idea that I think The Undertaker was supposed to come back at Survivor Series 2005 to like chase down Randy Orton. And at that point, there was like loads of SmackDown people in the ring, and Undertaker was supposed to like beat up all of them, give Matt Hardy a chokeslam, but Matt Hardy just rolled out of the ring instead, decided not to take the chokeslam, and so Undertaker got on his case for that. And that's kind of a sign that, you've kind of got on the wrong person if like the quote unquote locker room leader is not on your good side. And he's had a few other incidents which caused like heat backstage, probably usually stuff that he's posted on Twitter or like other social media platforms and stuff like that. So I think, but nowadays he's like, I mean, obviously he's rumors of him being put into a producer role now that his time in ring might be limited. It's just that obviously he's turned a corner in that stage of things. So I'd still give him over average with 6. The PR stuff, this is where I initially gave my lowest one of like a 4, because I do, as you guys have said, and rightly so, he has completely reinvented himself, turned his life around. He looks to be just like a loving father, a loving husband, obviously like creative and maybe quite eccentric guy, but seems to have a lot of his demons that he used to have under control. But there's just so much baggage when you're talking about the extent of Matt Hardy's career. Since with the Matt Hardy Edge Lita stuff, is obviously that's not really Hardy's fault that Lita cheated on him with Edge, but it's like the situation revolving around it, the calling up to Byte TV to talk to Lita on air, that probably didn't go very well. Matt was the one that ended up getting fired over the entire thing, so it's clear what side WWE was going on. And then the like the calls to try and get himself fired in like 2010, 2011. The drugs, the drug taking, which was quite obvious. The suicide claims that he made as well. There's a really, especially with his time in TNA, like arrests, DUIs. Apparently, the claims that he was beating Rebby Hardy at one point, even though obviously that proved to be pretty much unfounded, or it didn't get taken any further than it was. But I think I'm gonna, after hearing you guys, I'm gonna bump it up to a 5, just because he has now the PR side of things as a redemption story, which is obviously a good thing from a WWE's PR standard, that they've taken this guy that like did have his problems, but he's turned his life around, and WWE can claim to have like supported him in that journey and like revived his career by bringing him back after what he did in like Ring of Honor and TNA. But I think there's too much baggage to go anything other than an average score.
See, I'm actually thinking of going down to a 4 now, because you brought up a couple that I forgot about. I forgot about the whole like domestic abuse thing with Rebby.
Now, was that a one-time thing? Because I only remember the one arrest, and they arrested both of them, and it was like they had both just gotten into it.
I'm not saying that, like, obviously like the situation's cleared up now, whatever it was, because they seem to be like happy together now. And it probably was on both sides, but it's still a black mark to have any sort of suggestions around that surrounding you.
True.
I guess this is my distinction that I'm kind of struggling with in my brain right now. I haven't ever given a 1 to anybody in any category. And I haven't given a 0 to anybody in any category. I've given 10s, but it's hard to kind of... It's easy for me to look at something and go, well, they're not bad, but they're not that great, so let me give them a 6 because it's higher than average, because average being 5. But then if I look at average as being 5, Matt Hardy's got a lot of negatives going for him. Can I really give him the average score? I got to give him a negative one, right?
Well, I think it's like I say, it's like the case of, yeah, he does have a lot of baggage behind it, but now he's kind of turned his life around. It almost upsells his PR worth, because there's nothing better than a story of somebody that did hit rock bottom and then turned his life around. So it's like a sense of, I don't know, someone like I don't know, Ty Dillinger, say. Ty Dillinger's really got no negatives attached to him, other than the fact that he's left WWE a few times due to like being fired, but that's because they just didn't want him at that point in time. But you can't really give him too much because he doesn't like do anything. It's like he's neither a negative nor a positive. Whereas Matt Hardy, like definitely a few years ago, would be a huge negative. I'd probably put him in the 1s or 2s area, just because of how much of a fucker he was. In the same way Jeff Hardy was as well. But because they've come through the other side of it and seemingly turned their life around on the side of it, it actually makes them a positive PR influence, at least on a business standpoint, not on a moral or ethical standpoint, maybe. But
I'm looking at
reference. I'm looking at what you gave Sean.
Well, that's
and you gave him a 7. So
that's where I'm struggling with here, because for future reference, everybody, we're gonna go back and do like a full on like recalibration things. But since I have been adjusting some things here and there, I'm looking at like I had given the lowest scores that I had given anybody were Del Rio, Page, Buff Bagwell, Bob Holly, and Rob Van Dam. And I gave the highest out of those were Bob Holly. I had given him the highest actually out of that. Shawn Michaels I had given a 7 to, partially because of what we were saying with the whole Matt Hardy thing, where it was like, well, he was really low, but then he ended up doing this whole like this whole new Christian thing, and then over the past bunch of years, he's had more positives and not really any negatives. And it kind of became like a wash, sort of, which I guess I probably should move Michaels down to a 6 at the most in the grand scheme of things. But I look at like Del Rio being like a 2. Del Rio had a lot of things going on. I don't know if I would put him at a 2. I think he... See, I don't know. That's tough, because where do you... make the distinction between a 0 and a 4 on the negative side of things, a 5 being like bog standard, and then 6 and everything going forward. I think it's easier to look at the positives than it is to look at the negatives, because the only person that I can think of that would get like a 0 is Benoit.
Yeah, there's a few other people that I might be able to name, but they're probably like just old NWA guys that even though
Yeah, well,
or rape people, but it's like
yeah, like,
Benoit
but
fits into that category quite.
like you'd pretty much have to be like a Benoit type, like a Jimmy Snuka maybe even, like different things like that.
And to get a 1, you'd have to be like a New Jack or something.
Yeah, New Jack would certainly be a 1. So then it's like, well, 2 is a little harsh for like a Del Rio and everything. So I wouldn't go that far down for Hardy for a 2. 3, I still think might be a little bit too much, but 4 to me makes a lot of sense. Because if I gave a 5 to Steve Blackman because there's just nothing going on for him. And if he's a 5, Matt Hardy's got a lot more negatives than Steve Blackman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I agree, and I decided based on that thing to revise back down to my original 4 for Matt Hardy.
I will. I feel like I have to lower it now too, because
that's a good point to think of, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just a case of like we can't absolve him for the, because it is a full career perspective. There was a time during his career where he was like persona non grata, like someone you just WWE wouldn't touch at all. So yeah, I think overall, I think there's more time in his career where he was perceived negatively, or the stuff that he did during that spell between like the late 2000s, early 2010s was probably about as low a reputation as you could get without like hurting or getting like arrested for a significant period of time.
Right. He didn't go to prison for 8 years or something like that.
No,
but he did
any,
go
like,
to
major crimes, but
he did get arrested multiple times and stuff.
Oh yeah, and he did do the like clearly like drug overdoses and like I do have to like mention that suicide thing as well, because that is just something that you can't do. You can't make a claim online that you're going to commit suicide.
Yeah, I followed that closely. That was.
I don't say like not follow through or anything like that, but like that's just.
Not follow through.
No, I said I followed that closely. No. I was.
No. I was saying that was like.
Yeah, Callum was like, not follow through, but
there's no payoff in this. There's like, but no, it's a sense of. Obviously, you should be asking for help in that situation, but you shouldn't be doing it on that public forum. It's not on to do it, especially if there seems to be at least some speculation that it was like just fate to get attention. It's like you can't do that sort of thing. That's a really like horrible thing to do, and I'm sure he's learned from that.
On Matthew, all caps. That was a weird thing that he was doing.
Yeah, he was like really weird on social media for a very long time, and that's not like there's a lot of stuff that you can bring up on Matt Hardy that would get him like a lot of negative press.
Yeah, so I think I'm sticking with a 4 on this. I think that it's a shame we can't give him a higher score, but I feel like this is more like in time he will get a higher score, but right now in 2018 he still has a lot more that he needs to work to undo, kind of.
I was going to give him a 5. I was going to lower it to a 5, but if Blackman is a 5, I gotta go 4 because there are those negatives.
And I mean, for that matter, like there's an opportunity to make Blackman higher, but I mean, Blackman would be a 5, right? Like he's just
he didn't done anything. Like I said,
he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything great. Like that's you can't really give him a
he's not
positive
somebody
score.
WWE would use for a PR thing, but he's not somebody that's going to be a PR nightmare for WWE either. So.
I think right now the highest people that I've got for public relations are, let's see what I got going on here. I've got Mick Foley for a 9. I think that might be my highest.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
For some reason, I have Cody Rhodes as a 9. That's not true.
Oh, you're not now.
No. Cody Rhodes is, 7, 8, that kind of a thing.
But I'd say like someone like a John Cena's a 10 for that sort of thing. But
Yeah, Cena's a 10. Yeah, he's pretty much the benchmark when it comes to this. And at this point, Triple H is high up there too.
Oh yeah,
I'd put him at an 8 or a 9 maybe.
he does have a history though. So
Yeah, maybe put him at an 8. But
it's like a full retrospective. Like the Matt Hardy of 2018 is probably like an 8 or a 9 for the public relations stuff. But the Matt Hardy of 2011 was like a 2. So
yeah, so that's for anybody that's going to be like, it's too hard on him. That's how you get the number scores. Certain people just, they've got a lot of negatives working against them. And when you have no negatives and you do the basic standard work of like, an Apollo Crews nowadays, it's like, yeah, he's a little bit higher than the basic. He's probably a 6. And if he's like a 6 for doing like, I don't know, be a star or whatever like that, can't really put Matt in the same regard, Sorry, Matt. So let's go over to the final 2 sections here that are under crowd reaction, and they are popularity and credibility. The popularity is pretty self-explanatory. They're just pure popularity. How does the crowd respond to them? Are the ratings up when they're on screen, or, when they're champion, do people tune in? How many followers on social media do they have? Do they sell a lot of merchandise? That kind of stuff. Credibility is more on the kayfabe side of things, but in the grand scheme of their career, how do you rank them on like that person was like a perpetual main eventer, they're a Hall of Famer, or they're like a Barry Horowitz that, it was a big deal that he won a match, that type of thing. I went 6s. I went with 6 on popularity because in my mind, Jeff was always the more popular, and the Hardy Boys as a unit were more popular. And if we were doing the Hardy Boys, I'd go with like an 8. But Matt, when it became like just Matt Hardy, I don't know if anybody was really clamoring for him all that much. Credibility wise, though, with a 6, to me, that's kind of in the same regard. He won most of his titles as a tag team member, so he kind of splits the difference a little bit for that. And tag teams perpetually mean the least in WWE. Never won a world title in WWE. He did it in Impact and stuff, but everybody can fucking win a world title in Impact, so that doesn't matter to me. Never won the Universal or the World Heavyweight or the WWE title. He won the ECW title, so that gives him a little bit of a bump up. And he won mid-card titles, so he shouldn't be like a 4 or anything else like that. But again, looking at my list, I had given really high marks to like Brock Lesnar as a 10 for credibility, Triple H as a 10 for credibility. The lowest that I had given was a 3 for Buff Bagwell and for Santino, because Santino was a guy that every time he won a match, it was supposed to be a surprise. And I think the only 5s that I have are Bob Holly and Shane McMahon, because Shane actually probably should be a 4. Bob Holly being a 5 to me makes sense, because he was a guy that he won some titles here and there and stuff, but you could never really count on him being that much higher than a mid-card dude. Whereas Matt Hardy won some mid-card titles and stuff, so I have to at least give him a 6 on that. There's, I think, a chance to give him a 7. I don't know, though. What are you guys thinking?
Well, I'll go next. I gave him 2 7s. I think he is popular. I think that he is one of those guys that people really enjoy, especially with, distance. Like when they come back, they're really into the Hardys, and Matt in particular, I think, was always on the cusp of being in that main event scene, but he could just never crack it. So I gave him a 7. He has been, ECW champion, US champion. They used him towards the higher end of the card in early 2009 when he was feuding with Jeff. So I feel like a 7 is a good fit for him in popularity and credibility, because he's no Lesnar, but I definitely think he's at least a couple notches above Hardcore Holly. And, he was good enough to be a world champion in Impact, and that's at least a mid-card guy in WWE, so 7.
I guess I'll be the higher end of this one. I've got 2 8s. There's no denying that for whatever brief period of time it was, Matt Hardy was the most talked about name in professional wrestling for a period of time. And I think that alone merits an 8 at the very least. And the Hardy Boys were incredibly popular. I think Jeff was obviously, and will universally be, the more popular of the 2 Hardy Boys. Matt's one was kind of more enduring, though. I don't think he ever reached, obviously, with the stuff that he did in the 2011s and 2012s, or something along those lines, his stock did drop quite considerably, but I think he was more consistently in favour than Jeff Hardy, who kind of hit dips and troughs, especially after like the Sting incident at Victory Road or elements like that. But I think, especially with just the broken Hardy gimmick, it made him like the big thing in professional wrestling for, again, just like maybe a year, probably even less than that. But I think that's still worth noting that at that point in time, especially for somebody who wasn't in WWE and was wrestling mainly for Impact, but across like loads of independent promotions, it's a pretty like amazing accomplishment. And then I give him an 8 for credibility because he's won a lot of championships in WWE. Like, he has a claim to be one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time. So obviously won it multiple times with Jeff Hardy. He's also got tag team titles with MVP and Bray Wyatt, obviously. He's a former European champion, former Cruiserweight champion. I loved his Cruiserweight championship reign. I thought that was one of the best WWE Cruiserweight championship reigns of the entire run that they had with the title.
Hell yeah.
So European champion, ECW champion.
United States champion.
Yep, United States champion as well. Obviously, Impact Wrestling, he's former 2-time world champion there as well. And I know obviously it's Impact Wrestling, so what are you going to do really? But it's still like worth nothing. Ring of Honor tag team champion, TNA tag team champion. He's like won quite a lot, and I think because I was like thinking about like how I would equate it to someone like obviously Jeff, and I don't think you can really give any, like, in terms of credibility, you can't really give like Jeff any lower than 9 for being a multiple-time world champion, and like he's basically held every championship in WWE. And Matt's only real distinction from Jeff is the fact that he's never been an Intercontinental champion, so he's never really had that prestige attached to him, and he's never won a real world championship in WWE. So that's obviously a couple of notches down, but he's a guaranteed Hall of Famer as well. So I think an 8's maybe you could argue down to a 7, but I think I'm going to stick with the 8.
You guys convinced me to bump him up 7 and 7. I'll
Yeah.
go with that. Which means I've adjusted my score all throughout this whole thing, and I ended up with a couple adjustments that turned out to be the exact same score at the end. My final tally is a 63 out of 100.
I have a 78
What?
out of 100. Yeah, I think I...
Are you miscounting some of this stuff?
Hold on, we got 10 categories, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
1, 2...
There's no way you've got 78.
That's a big gap.
Yeah, I definitely miscounted. Hold on a minute.
In the meantime, Callum, what's your score?
My favorite number, 69. So
I don't think anybody's gotten a 69 from me yet. Let me go through that real quick. The closest
that's
I've got on
unfortunate for
my current score, like as far as my adjusting ratings right now, the closest I have is a 68 for Mick Foley.
68. Oh wow!
So I ended up, after redoing the math, I ended up with a 63.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Add a
gave
few more
him 15
categories
points
after
in
that.
there that
Yeah.
I don't know where they came from.
Yeah. So this, I mean, the 63, 63, and 69, like those make sense to me. You know, the highest out of anybody that I have ever given a score to are actually people that we have not done the additions yet. I've done a couple side things, and the highest out of any score that I've given anybody is a 91. And that's obviously big star type people. Matt Hardy is not one of the bigger ones. He is above average in a lot of different ways. So he shouldn't have been a 50. And he isn't. He's in the 60s. Makes sense to me. It seems weird that he's not in the 70s, but at the same time, well, not everybody can be everything. And if, you look at like a perfect 100 is damn near impossible, then the 80 something to 90 something range is really what you're looking to score. And if that's the top, Matt Hardy's not a B player. He's a C player in my mind. You look at it,
B minus.
I look at Jeff as a B minus, and I look at Matt as not being on par with Jeff. So Matt's a C plus.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which is fine. It's passing.
Well, if we ever do superstar scores on Jeff Hardy, I'm just going to try and intentionally get him a lower score than Matt, just because.
I got a feeling, and I almost kind of wanted to do a superstar score as Jeff Hardy to go along with this, but we're not doing that, and I didn't do the graphics for it and stuff like that. But I got a feeling that if I were to do that, he would score. If my Matt Hardy score is a 63, my Jeff score would probably be something like a 67. Like it would balance out a little bit more. He might be like a 70. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta think he's in the 70s. Well, that marketability might kill him, but
yeah, I think like Jeff would be higher for credibility, popularity, and like athleticism and stuff like that. But I think he'd score considerably lower for promo ability, character, and obviously the PR stuff as well.
Yeah,
he's definitely
he'd be
the
in
worst promo out of the two.
They have different strengths and different things like that, and I might just go ahead off screen and do my little Jeff Hardy thing and see what happens with that. And we might revisit this in the future. And also, when it comes to that, eventually down the line, we're going to end up doing tag teams. So it'll be kind of interesting if at some point we do like Matt Hardy, at some point we do Jeff Hardy, then at some point we do the Hardy Boys, because then we're a whole different animal, because then it becomes, well, you got to take the positives and the negatives of both guys. And, popularity wise, the Hardy Boys, they're up there, man. Credibility wise, they've won a lot of titles. Public relations, woof, you take all the negatives. You know what I mean? So that's how the scores work. It's pretty interesting. And I want to know what not only do you guys have to say about our scores, but what your scores are. If you do your little tracking and you make your lists and figure out your rating scale, what did you get? Did you get around the 60 something range like we did, or are you a little bit more lenient? Is it like, well, let's let the past be the past and let's give him a 7 for public relations or something like that? Or, do you think he was more athletic than we think? Or do you think his credibility is a lot lower? Or, whatever the case may be. Drop your comments in the comment section below on YouTube or on the page on Smark Out Moment in any capacity like that. Make sure you also stay tuned to everything else that we've got going your way, with not just like superstar scores in the future. We are going to do a recalibration. I don't know when, but that is something to be paying attention to. But just in general, because next week we're going to be getting into the predictions and then the post show, of course, for Super Showdown. And we've got another hot tag. That's every single week. As far as when those things come out, what you should be aware of is the subscribe button on YouTube also comes with the little bell to check off for notifications, to get a little email pop up whenever we do post those. But you could also follow Facebook and Twitter at SmarkOutMoment and the RSS feed of SmarkOutMoment.com. You can also follow A Mango Tree, and Tony Mango on those things, and you'll find links to those things, as well as the Fanboys Anonymous stuff. Fanboysanonymous.com is where you'll find all that. Go like and share and favorite and do all the same stuff when it comes to Fanboys. If you want to support Smark Out Moment and you want to do so with the spare change in your pocket, Patreon is something to pay attention to, especially if you want more superstar scores. try the $20 tier mark and request somebody. You know, for the longest time it was Superstar Scores Buff Bagwell. Are we ever going to do that? That kind of a thing. It eventually came around to it. I know people have wanted us to do a Superstar Scores big show for a while. I know that people are really clamoring for Superstar Scores Undertaker. That's been something that's been mentioned a lot of times, especially because we started with Shawn Michaels, and by now everybody knows Undertaker is my number 2 favorite of all time. You know, there's lots of different people that we haven't even scratched the surface for yet on even just the good people. Think about the bad people that we could do. We haven't really done more than 1 or 2 of like, well, it'd be kind of funny to do like the Buff Bagwell one. What if we did Superstar Scores like, I mean, God, Braden Walker.
Heidenreich.
Like
Ooh.
there's some bad things that we could do here. So, you know, hey, maybe you're a big fan of Umaga and you want us to do Superstar Scores Umaga. You know, whatever the case may be, that's the tier that you would pay attention to for that. But there's also the TeePublic and the Redbubble shops if you wanted something on the merchandise side. And anything else that's happening, whatever support you guys have to show for a Smark Out moment and all the other kind of branding and all the other kind of stuff like that, very, very appreciated, as well as just tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. But that's my plugs. Let's go over to Callum.
Find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Stay tuned to the weekly stuff on Smark Out Own because I will be doing the Battle of the Brands as soon as I'm able to. Hopefully get it out like today, but if not, then definitely tomorrow. But yeah, just keep checking all of that great content.
And for me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at DudeFelice. This week on the Triple Threat, we will be doing a career retrospective of The Undertaker. So if you do like The Undertaker and you want to hear some people talk about him, you'll get that on the Triple Threat this week. Also, check out WrestleZone for your daily wrestling news. And something to make Callum very happy, I will not be doing the pre-show or post-show for Super Showdown because I won't be here. So you get a week free of me, and yeah, I'll be back in 2 weeks.
And I'm
Got any
sadly
stretch
going to be
that to
watching it
3
live.
weeks?
What?
Maybe a month. Just
We'll see.
nah, it will be hard to get through just because the show will be bad. But you know.
Next week is going to suck. But we'll try to have some fun along the way with everything, and I hope that you guys have fun as well. Enjoy the rest of the week, everybody. We'll see you when we see you. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.